This is John McMurray of the Society for American Baseball Research, and we're pleased to be joined today by Harold Baines. In his major league career spanning from 1980 through 2001, Harold collected 2,866 hits, 384 home runs, and a 289 batting average. He played for five teams: the Chicago White Sox, the Texas Rangers, the Oakland Athletics, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Cleveland Indians. Selected first in the 1977 baseball draft, Harold hit 300 or better 8 times, and he's a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame. And we're recording this interview with Harold's permission on June the 18th, 2024. And Harold, what got you interested in baseball?
I was fortunate enough to grow up in a neighborhood where there was a lot of neighborhood teams that played. My dad played on one of the teams, so I think every kid likes to be around his dad. So I just tailed along with him. I fell in love with the game.
You were born in Easton, Maryland, to Linwood Jr. and Gloria Baines, and you grew up nearby in St. Michael's. Tell us about what your involvement in sports growing up.
Sports was three sports: uh, soccer first, basketball, and then baseball. Every sport got me in shape for the next sport. I played only 1 year of soccer, 4 years of basketball, 4 years of baseball.
Now, your father was a Mason, but he also himself was involved in baseball. What was his involvement?
I think, like I said earlier, he played on all the local teams. Like neighborhoods would play against each other, and he was, very popular around the neighborhood. There's a lot of stories that I don't believe that they told me how well he played and how far he could hit the ball. But he was, besides that, he was a great dad.
And you've described your dad as being your hero, not just in a baseball sense, but in a personal sense.
Well, I learned a lot just by watching. That's how I learned baseball. That's how I learned life, and I learned everything from him.
Now, you had gained attention even as a young player. There's a very famous story that Bill Veeck had noticed your ability as a 12-year-old. Is that true?
Uh, all I can say, he lived in the area, and supposedly he saw me play in a little league game, and I guess his friends would send him notes of how well I was doing through my career. I guess um, in 1977, he thought I was good enough to be drafted.
You were hitting some pretty long fly balls, even as a 12-year-old, as far as perhaps even 300 or 400 feet. Is that true?
I don't know where you get these stories from, but I mean, when I played, we didn't have fences, so you had to run everything out. I couldn't try to around the bases, so I really didn't know how far they went. I didn't have bases until I started playing the Major League Base. I mean, fences until I started playing Major League Base. I mean, American Legion
It's
baseball.
You mentioned that baseball wasn't your best sport. At what point were you, or at least that you were very good in soccer and very good in basketball? Were you thinking of becoming a professional in any sport other than baseball from a young age?
Not at all. No, I mean, I wasn't a kid that liked to do his homework, so I knew that college ones for me for especially basketball or soccer. Soccer, I played, like I said, I played 1 year, but baseball, all the scouts started coming around when I was 15, so I kind of gravitated towards just playing baseball.
Now, even though the scouts were coming around, you were getting walked intentionally quite a bit, which had to be very frustrating.
I mean, the other team is trying to win, so if you don't want me to beat you, then I guess you just walk me on first base.
Uh,
There's a story that uh, uh, we played a game. I got walked, I think, 3 or 4 times, and the scouts had me take batting practice after the game so they could see if I could swing or not.
Bill Veeck had repurchased the White Sox in 1975, and he apparently continued to keep an eye on you, and had seen you play in an American Legion tournament. Were you hearing from Bill Veeck at this time, and knowing that he had interest in you?
No, I didn't know who Bill Beck was, to be honest. I didn't follow the game of baseball. My first time in a Major League Stadium was when I got drafted by the White Sox, and they were in town that weekend, the weekend that I got drafted, and I went up there to hit batting practice. That was the first time in any major league stadium was Memorial Stadium.
And the White Sox had finished in last place in 1976. They had the first pick in the 77 draft. You had completed your senior season with an average over 500. And they apparently had sent one of their scouts, Walt Whitmire, to scout you. Do you remember that? I know Paul Richards was also in the mix.
Oh yeah, I don't remember him. I remember Paul Richards, but not until after I got drafted. I didn't really talk to any of the scouts while I was playing in high school.
It was said that you had a very natural swing. Is your swing something that you modeled after any particular player? Was it something you just stood up there and it came to you?
Swing was my creation, but knowing the game was partly Charlie Lau, who taught me how to look for certain pitches, where to look for certain balls on the plate, either give the guy the inside part of the plate or the outside part of the plate. And he took me from 39 RBIs to start getting 100 RBIs by being more a student of the game instead of just swinging at anything.
And Charlie Lau is known for his work with hitters. And just so I'm clear, you're saying he basically segmented the plate. So you had one part that you were looking for a pitch on, and you just left the other part to the pitcher. Is that what you're saying?
Uh, yes, up until two strikes. And then once you got two strikes, you just battle. But every pitcher has a pattern how they try to get you out. The faster you can figure that out, the better success you have. Not guarantee you a hit all the time, but it gives you a better idea of how they're trying to pitch you.
And you had a lot of drive to your swing that came through your legs. Is that something that Charlie Lau worked with you on also?
Not really, not really. I mean, I'm paying for it now with two knee surgeries, two knee replacements. But I wouldn't change anything for the world. It's trial and error when you're working on your swing. You just try to see what what you can stay consistent with. That's all I try to do is be consistent.
And you were certainly known for consistency. Consistency is mentioned on your Hall of Fame plaque. Tell us about the importance of just being consistent as a hitter because you don't always hear that today.
That's for me. I learned the most by just watching the game of the patterns the pitchers are doing. I mean, I think out of my 22 years, 12 years as a DH, so I really had a lot of time to study pitchers of not just how they pitch me, how they pitch other left-handed hitters, and I learned a lot that way.
And you were in the White Sox system, and you met Tony La Russa not on the major league level, but on the minor league level. I wondered if you could describe for us what Tony La Russa was like as a manager at that time, and the relationship that you developed with him.
A very strong relationship. He taught me how to play the game right. You know, you playing for the name on the front, not your name on the back. And it was very. He's a very intense person, and he loves to win.
And what is it that you think that bonded you so tightly with him? Do you have, is it your personalities or is it your approach to baseball?
Well, hopefully, it was the way I played the game and the way I interacted with my teammates, and I didn't give up until the last out was out.
Mhm. It you had good success on the minor league level. You did go to the Triple A Iowa Oaks. And at the same time, even though you were doing well, sometimes you had your struggles in the minor leagues. How did you work through those?
You keep going out there. I actually did better when I struggled and when I didn't struggle. You know, I was able to put things behind me. I mean, whatever happened yesterday, it was yesterday. You just look forward to today.
You were able to compartmentalize it.
Very much so.
It so you when LaRussa was White Sox manager, he brought you up to the team. Your swing was compared to Billy Williams, which is a great compliment. And it was one of those things where there were great expectations for you from the very beginning. Did that pressure bother you?
I didn't read the papers, so really didn't bother me. I mean, I'm a person that comes to do a job and go home. I know I don't look for the glory part of it. I just want to be consistent, and I wanted to be in the big leagues a long time.
There were people who were calling you a superstar from the very beginning, and of course, you were saying you didn't necessarily pay attention to that. You did have a good while before you got your first hit on the major league level. When you got up, you went your first several games without a hit. But did it discourage you?
No, because it wasn't a lot of strikeouts. I was hitting the ball pretty good. It's just people were in the spot where I was hitting the ball. And on my 21st at bat, I was lucky enough to get a hanging slider for a base
And
hit.
that was against Jim Cott, who was playing for the New York Yankees at that time. You said you had mentioned to me that you saw Jim Cott fairly recently.
I did. I saw him at the Hall of Fame. We had a Negro League weekend up there, and he was that's the only man I ever met can play golf on both sides and shoot his age. And a
Now, a couple of
very
days
nice
after,
man. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Harold. I was going to say a couple of nights after you got that first hit off of Jim Cott, you hit a home run off against Jim Palmer. What do you remember about that?
He remembers more than I do. he knows the he knows the pitch and everything. I think the best thing about it was I think it was in Baltimore, so I think my family was there to see it.
It and you started, to get your groove as a rookie hitter. At what point did you feel like, hey, that you really had a future in Major League Baseball?
I never took it for granted. Always looking over my shoulder. It's always somebody trying to take your job, not personally, but he's trying to get to the big leagues. But I was going to make it harder for the next guy to take my job.
And as you got bigger as you got into your second year, and you were able to drive the ball more. Is that correct?
I think I was 175 when I signed, and then they introduced me to weight, so I was able to get a little stronger.
Do you feel from a hitting, sometimes you hear hitters say that the way to do it is just to hit the baseball and not necessarily be involved in weight training. But what I'm hearing you say is that really does make a difference.
There's a place for it. I mean, you can overdo it, but there's a place for weightlifting. Well, in my case, after my fifth year, I was hurt, so I had to. That's why I really started throwing weights after I hurt my knee, in 1986.
Now, in your first couple of years playing with the White Sox, what was that team like? What was the atmosphere around the White Sox at that time?
I was a rookie, so I just kept my mouth shut and put my head down and went to work. But
It wasn't a,
I had some great veterans around me: Carlton Fisk, Greg Lazinski. Those guys. I mean, showed me how to play the game correctly.
and they were mentors to you. I mean, in the sense that there's you certainly hear about um, ball players who where there's kind of a wait your turn kind of a situation, but it sounds as though they were welcoming and brought you into the fold and were willing to
Well,
help you.
yeah, it helped me, and when I see somebody's doing this right, I'm gonna study it. And those two guys took the right approach to play the game of baseball. So that's where I really learned a lot about their approach, their work ethic, what they did before the game, what they did after the game, and I took all that and put it in my memory bank.
Now that 1983 White Sox team that won 99 games, um, you had a 19 game hitting streak for that team. What was it about the 83 White Sox that stands out to you and made it such a memorable team?
I think first half we weren't that good. I think we made a trade for Julio Cruz with Seattle Mariners. I think after that we took off. Everybody had the type of year that they thought we could have, and we just came up a little short in the playoffs.
One of the more memorable moments from that year for you is the game-ending sacrifice fly that clinched the team's first postseason appearance since 1959. What do you remember about that moment?
I remember the pitch, and I remember the locker room after they pouring champagne all over me. But the actual whole game, I don't really remember. I just remember me hitting the breaking ball. I think it was Vandenberg. Julio Schools, Julio Cruz scored, and once we got in the dugout in the locker room, there was champagne everywhere. I'm not a drinker, but they were pouring all over me.
Uh, Certainly, you were known in your career for also being able to hit the ball to the opposite field, not just being a pull hitter. What's the secret to using the entire field?
It's not a secret. It's just, you know, um, let's go back to the way they were trying to pitch you. They thought they could get me out of the way, so I did my craft where I knew I could handle the outside pitch.
Now, in 1984, in a May 8th game, you ended the longest game in American League history, a 25 inning game where you had 10 at bats. And tell us about that game and what you recall.
Um, 10 at bats. I had 10 at bats. Jeez.
Yeah.
Um, I just remember that it was 2 days to play. We played 17 innings and we came back, and played, I guess, nine. And I was lucky enough to hit the home run over center field. And 20 minutes later, we were playing another 9 inning game. And Tom Seaver won both games.
And yeah, Seaver was in relief for then in that 25 inning game. Uh, Tell us about some of the White Sox players that you had the opportunity to play with. Lamar Hoyt, who had such a great year in '83.
Uh, Lamar Hurt was a good friend. He was kind of quiet like I was. I mean, he just went about his business. I mean, he wasn't one of those rah-rah guys. He was a pretty darn good pitcher.
You mentioned Carlton Fisk earlier. What do you remember most about him?
Uh, well, he was a great player, one, and his work ethic. I think that's where I got a lot of my work ethic. Before the game, he would stay late and do whatever he needed to get his body in shape for the next day.
You got to witness Ron Kittle's great year in '83, where he hit 35 home runs. Tell us about Kittle that year.
Now that's one unusual guy right there, but he's one of my best
Unusual.
friends, and he had a great year. I mean, I give him credit for that. Um, I think the year before he was in AAA, he hit 50 home runs. And he came up the next year as a rookie, and I think he hit 33 or 34. He had a great year.
What about Greg Luzinski?
Another quiet guy. I think he's from Chicago, right? Yeah, I mean, he's still a great friend now, and he was a great mentor, and he definitely was one of the strongest guys I've ever been around.
You mentioned being a man of few words. You noted it a couple of times in your own Hall of Fame speech. Following that 25 inning game, a reporter asked you about if you'd gotten all of that pitch, and you apparently used one word, evidently. And it became kind of a thing where sometimes even Carlton Fisk and others would refer to that particular incident or to you as Mr. Evidently. What was your tell us about your own interactions with the media as a player and being a person of few words?
It was easy for me. I answered the question. I would give you probably a yes or no answer. And that particular thing, I don't even remember saying evidently. I think my locker mate was called him Fisk, and he told me, later on that I did say evidently, but I don't remember saying evidently. But my conversations were pretty short with reporters. Not that I didn't like them. It's just that's my personality.
In 1985, you played in your first All-Star game, and you were a six-time All-Star. Is there an All-Star game that stands out to you as a particular favorite memory?
I think when I would be in Anaheim when I was able to be a starter as the first DH in the All-Star games. So I'm very proud of that.
I do have a question from Mark. Mark would like to know the pitcher that you had the most difficult time facing.
I didn't face him a lot, but I would say Randy Johnson would be the toughest. When he first came up, you didn't know where he was throwing the ball, especially if it was a left-handed hitter. He'd be three at your head and three sliders for strikes. So those days, after that, I took those days off.
I suppose you can be just wild enough to be a problem, right?
All enough to be effective.
Now, you did suffer a knee injury in the mid 1980s, where you at first base, and tell us what happened there with your foot getting stepped on.
Well, it was a bang bang play at first where the pitcher had to cover, and his foot was in the middle of the bag, and I stepped on his ankle, and my ankle went the other way, and I tore my meniscus.
Hmm.
We're like 6 games left in the season.
And you had to, over time, had 8 knee surgeries. I mean, it seems like something that today would be relatively easy to fix, uh, but it
Well,
lingered for you.
I've had 10 knee surgeries and I have 2 knee replacements.
Mm. So you were in pain ever from the time of that injury through the remainder of your career. You always had some knee problems or pain, right?
Correct. I mean, it's just, I did, but I wouldn't change anything for the world. I mean, it was part of the job and I just took it as a job.
So you in '87, the your knees forced you into a designated hitter role, and but you've said that being a designated hitter isn't something anybody particularly wants to do. You had to do it.
If I wanted to keep a job, yes. That's the only way I could help my team is, I started studying pitchers, studying more so how they were trying to get me out. And, it worked over the last 12 years.
When you're a designated hitter and you're not playing in the field, is it more difficult mentally to keep your mind in the game?
I think you got to accept it first. Because of my knee injuries, I accepted pretty quick and just, I still had to hit to keep on playing. So that was not an easy task, but, that's the way I was able to keep a job.
Now, what did you do to help yourself, help your knees? Did you work on strengthening exercises? Did you just run as little as possible? What was what made it as good as it was going to get?
Physical therapy with the trainers, just getting me on the field, period. And it wasn't anything special. It just, come in 2 hours before the other players and get done what I need to get done just to be ready for batting practice.
You mentioned Charlie Lau, but you also wound up working later with Walt Hriniak. What was his Hriniak's approach, and how did that differ from Charlie Lau's approach?
Not much difference. The only difference was um, Charlie Lau was, you had to pretty much come to him. He wasn't like a guy that would go to you and force himself on you. And Reniak was um, same theory of the swing and pitches, but he was more aggressive in a nice way.
Tell us about the end of that time in Chicago and going to the Texas Rangers, which included Sammy Sosa as part of that deal. Um, how did you feel about that trade?
I was shocked first, but I think that's when I realized it was a business and not just a game. But after that, I just, put my head down. They told me, look, 9 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock, I was on a flight to Texas. So my whole world changed.
And you made clear that the fans and the organization you still have thought well of, even though you were being traded away at the time.
They treated me like Jerry, in particular, and everybody that works for the White Sox have always treated me like family.
I did have a question from Jeff, since it's around this time. Can you describe the moment when you found out that your number was being retired?
Um, I think it was when we came back, and I was a Texas Ranger. Somebody had told me that they were retiring my number. I think I still was in shock, so it really wasn't. Um, not, it was special, but not special because I was still in that fog of being traded. Because I think it was a month later when they decided. I'm grateful they did it. It's just that I wasn't in that frame of mind to be grateful for it.
Now, had some ups and downs in Texas. You were quoted as saying you didn't feel that you were being utilized the right way. What did you mean by that?
I just want to play. I mean, just and Texas had a great team. It just I wasn't in a position where I was playing as much as I thought I could play to help the team.
I have a question from Scott who wants to know what was the most challenging part of the game for you?
That's a good question. It's just for me. I would say the travel, not the actual baseball part of it. I mean, you're in one city maybe 2 days, the other city 3 days, so you're jumping in and out of beds that you can't really get, or time zones that you got to get used to it. But the baseball part, wasn't really that challenging of being there. It's just the travel for me.
In 1990, you were traded from Texas to Oakland for two pitchers, and the A's were on their way to their third straight American League pennant, and Tony La Russa was the manager. Um, that Oakland team was really, really formidable. Tell us about it, if you would.
I couldn't understand why they needed me. They'd already been to the World Series 2 years in a row. This was would be their third year when I got there, and the other gentleman that they got was Willie McGee too, another great player, the same day. But it was a great team. I mean, I loved being there for 2.5 years.
And that was a veteran ball club too, and man, it had to be people who knew how to play the game of baseball, and at the same time were still at the top of their game.
Yeah, I think it's to the point where you know what your job is, go do it, and Tony let you do it until you couldn't do it anymore.
Now, in Game 3 of the World Series, you had a two-run home run off of Tom Browning of the Reds. Tell us what you recall of that moment.
Well, I think I would never have been in the game, and I think Conseco had some migraine headaches, and he couldn't play, so I was the next man up, and I was grateful for the opportunity. And I got lucky to hit I think it was a slider that he hung, and it was a great feeling running around the bases.
What happened in that World Series? It seemed as though things just didn't go right for Oakland. Was it just not your day, or was there more to it?
I think we just ran into a hot team. The Cincinnati Reds were good on all aspects of their game: pitching, defense, hitting, timely hitting, and we didn't have any of that.
It and tell us about McGuire and Canseco and what you remember about them at that stage of their career.
Both of them are quiet guys, but they they were great hitters when I played with them, even afterwards. And they were I still don't amazed that I was there playing with them, just because, like I said before, they was a great team before I got there.
Do you think that the '83 White Sox or the '90 A's was the better of the two teams that you played on?
The only reason I say the A is because I played in the World Series. I didn't play in the World Series with the White Sox, so I think that's every player's dream to play in the World Series.
Uh, Tell us about playing in Baltimore. And you had gotten your 2000th hit there. You've been a veteran by that time. What was the Baltimore Orioles organization like?
I was a veteran team too, so I'd walked in another great situation, and I was, I think I got traded from the White Sox over to the Orioles my second time. But when I came back my first time, I was happy to sleep in my own bed for a change.
You also had at least had another operation on your knee while you were in Oriole. How were you holding up at that time?
I mean, once you tear your meniscus, you're always going to have problems with it. So, I mean, they say it's like a chicken bone, the gristle of it. So once it starts flaying off, you're gonna always gotta have to go in there and clean it out.
In Baltimore, one player that you also got to know was Mike Mussina. What was he like as a teammate and as a player?
He was too smart for the game. He was a very intelligent guy. He's a very good pitcher. Um, very quiet, but he was very good at his craft.
Did you ever think of changing your batting stance at all to make it easier on your knees? I had read reports that the way you planted your foot could also put some stress upon your knees. Was that true?
Um, well, I mess with success. You just deal with it. I mean, that's what made me successful. So I wasn't going to change that.
You ultimately had multiple stints with the White Sox, and you've had a good relationship with the team and the city over time. What have the Chicago fans meant to you?
Everything. I mean, they got me as a kid when I came up, and they saw my last game that I played Major League Baseball. So that was um, they always treat me great when I come back here. So I have a lot of respect for the fans and the organization of the White Sox.
For those fans who remember you as a DH, you did play in right field. You were known for having an above average arm. Could you describe for us what you were like defensively before your injury and your approach to playing the position?
Approach to playing the position as a baseball player, you want to be able to play on both sides. If I didn't hurt my knees, I still wanted to be an outfielder. So if you can't win the game offensively, you can help the team defensively. So I took pride in my offense and my defense.
Tell us about your relatively brief time in Cleveland. You went from Baltimore to the Cleveland Indians. Combined, you did have 100 RBIs that season, and you were also playing on a very good Cleveland team with a lot of veteran presence. What was that team like?
There was another team that really didn't need me, what they already have. But it was great to be there. I got to play in another playoffs. It was only 2 months, but I met a lot. Eventually, had a lot of friends off that team, and they were a good team for a long time.
At the end of your career as a player, you did get you were approaching 2,900 hits, and you thought you were going to be able to keep playing, but tell us what happened at the end of your career.
Last year, 2001, I think Frank got hurt, and I had ability to play more, but I tore my abductor muscle, so I missed 3 months of the season, and that was pretty much over for me.
You were known as a great clutch hitter. Is there any secret to hitting in the clutch?
I think if you can do that, you'll have a longevity in the game. So it goes back to La Russa. I mean, you always 7th, 8th, and 9th inning should be your best part of your game. Already be ready for the 7th, 8th, 9th inning, and I took that to heart.
Following your playing days, you were a roving minor league hitting instructor. How do you go about teaching others to hit?
You take what they have and give them my little piece that I see, and wish them well. I mean, it's not rocket science. Just the kids got drafted for a reason. They have a talent. You just try to fine tune it a little bit.
So it sounds as though you're not having a list of requirements that they have to have. You're trying to take what they have, add to it, but not remake their entire swing or anything like that.
Correct. I mean, in some cases you do, but majority of them, you just try to make them smarter around the plate. What part of the plate, you can drive the ball with, what part of the plate you give up. And that was part of my teaching.
Kirk would like to know what were the differences between hitting at Old Comiskey Park and the new Comiskey Park, and which one did you like to play in more?
Well, I play more in the old stadium because I was an outfielder. But hitting wise, I would say the new stadium is better. It's just always damp, and the ball didn't really travel that good in the old stadium. I mean, I wasn't Ryan Kittle or Greg Lazinski could hit the ball out of the ballpark.
In Chicago, manager Ozzie Guillen had asked you, his former teammate, to become a bench coach, and you were a part of the White Sox team that earned a World Series ring in 2005. What do you recall most about that 2005 team?
A lot of characters, but it was kind of a veteran team that we had several leaders that, as coaches, you just let them go out there and play, and our pitching staff was outstanding.
And they had a really great run in the playoffs, losing, I believe, only one game. And what was that pitching had to be among the most extraordinary that you ever witnessed in your major league career?
I would say yes. I mean, I don't think you ever see that 4 complete games in a World Series. I think it was. Was it? No. Well, I thought it was 4 complete games. But no, because Jinx gave it. LCS, it was 4 complete games, 3 complete games. But
I have a question from Sean who would like to know which statistic are you most proud of? For example, I love your 1,628 career RBI, but which one do you like the most?
all of them. I would say the RBIs. I was the guy that my goals were, try to have over 50 by All-Star break and have 100 by the end of the season. So I took pride in not leaving guys on base.
Did you pay attention to statistics when you were playing much?
No, no, only the RBIs because that means you really help your team try to win if you're not getting runs. I mean,
Now, following your
I didn't sit around and look at the stats every day like some people I know names.
now following your career, you were on the ballot for the Hall of Fame, and you ultimately dropped off the writers' ballot, and you were then elected by the Today's Game Era Committee. Tell us your feelings about the Hall of Fame process. It has to be challenging mentally to uh, see some of the vote totals with the writers and just hang in there during the vote process.
I mean, they say everything happens for a reason. I wasn't one guy sitting around hope I make the Hall of Fame. It just I was fortunate enough to have some voters that believed in the way I played the game, and um, the I think the Veterans Committee is tougher to get on than the actual baseball writers because you only got 16 votes, and you got to have 12 out of 16, which is 75%. I don't think that's easy to get.
And you were quoted as saying you were shocked when you got in.
Very shocked, I think once you come off the ballot, you just and you. I was very low in the beginning, so I really didn't. I told somebody the other day I didn't play the game to try to get to the Hall of Fame. I played the game because I love it. One, it was a job, and to provide for my family. That's why I played the game of baseball.
Jeff would like to know, do you know what your launch angle and exit velocity were? Since that is something that is cited quite often in the current game. Did you have any clue what it was?
I don't know what it is today, so I definitely wouldn't know what it was back then. I don't understand that part of the game. I mean, it's a mystery to me that you need all those numbers just to try to hit a baseball.
Now, since you've been elected to the Hall of Fame, what does it mean to you?
What does it mean to me? Means I was not that bad of a player. I mean, there's some people out there that thought I was pretty good.
Tell us your opinions of today's game that does have a lot more statistics and um, measurable things than you had when you were a player. Do you like the changes in the game?
Some I do, some I don't. It's just, but if you want to stay in the game, you got to evolve with it. So I've learned to evolve with it. I mean, I don't have to do the day-to-day stuff that the coaches have to do today, but if you want to stay in the game, you got to be prepared.
You mentioned about being consistent, doing your job every day. Is that what you credit for staying in the game as long as you did?
I do. I mean, not just people don't see what you do before the game even starts. So if you put the work in, that allowed me to play as long as I did.
And you've battled some other health challenges in recent years, including having heart replacement surgery. How are you doing?
I'm 3 years out, so I'm doing pretty well.
Paul would like to know about what you've been doing in your post baseball career.
Um, I still work for the Chicago White Sox. I do community relations and community service. But what I tell people is I shake hands and I kiss babies at the stadium.
Do you have a favorite career on field highlight?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say just being part of the '05 team that actually finally won the World Series and be a part of it. Not as a player, but I was part of it as a coach. And I think every player, coach or player, plays the game to try to get a ring for himself, for the organization, and for the city.
How would you like people to remember you as a player when they look back upon your career years from now?
Uh, that I played the game the right way. I mean, I was consistent. I wasn't flamboyant, and I just tried to get the job done.
I have a question from Dennis. He asks about, if someone says questions your qualifications for the Hall of Fame, how do you respond?
I don't. I mean, people have a entitled for their opinion. So um, all I know is they can't take it away from me. So it doesn't really matter.
In terms of your own Is there any player that you look at today that you particularly like, and say that that person has a very natural swing, or you like the way that they play?
Um, I think not just one. I mean, every team probably has one, but I like Mookie Betts for the Dodgers. He's not really a strong kid, but he puts up the numbers. He's a MVP, batting titles, World Series champ. But my favorite player was Kirby Puckett. Even when I was playing, that's the guy I would pay to go see play a game of baseball
You
because
talking
he
about
always
both at bat in the field and in the field?
more so his personality, the way he played the game, offense and defense. Yeah, he was a good center fielder.
In terms of baseball, from if someone did not get to see the 80s and 90s and the way that baseball is played, how would you describe the baseball of your era?
I I don't want to say it's harder than it is now, but I think it's a little easier now to get to the big leagues than it was back then. I mean, I had a short road to the big leagues, but it was definitely harder back then to get to the big leagues because most teams were set with their positions for at least 10 years. So it's kind of hard for a player to break into big leagues.
Mhm. It Now I know you're getting ready to watch the game, and I had promised that we wouldn't get too close to the start of the game, so I'm gonna let you go and thank you for your time with us tonight and for reflecting on your major league career, Harold.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and wish you great success the remainder of the season and beyond.
You, you do the same.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and wish you good night.